If marriage is a marathon, mine's been all uphill for the past 6 months. My name is David Lawson, and I'm about to tell you how I discovered that my wife Rachel had been playing house with her boss while I was debugging code and believing her lies about working late. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. It started with the wardrobe changes. Rachel, who used to wear sensible blazers and comfortable flats to her PR job, suddenly developed a taste for tight skirts and expensive heels. When I asked about it, she'd flash that practiced smile and say something about updating her professional image. Right, because nothing says professional like a neckline that could cause traffic accidents. The late-night phone calls were next. Rachel would giggle into her phone in the bathroom, whispering sweet nothings to someone who definitely wasn't discussing quarterly reports. When she'd emerge, cheeks flushed, I'd ask who called. Just work stuff, honey. You know how demanding Greg can be. Gregory Turner, her boss, married man with a pregnant fiancée, drives a Mercedes that costs more than my annual salary and apparently has the moral compass of a broken weather vane. I'd met him at office parties, the kind of guy who tells inappropriate jokes and thinks his money makes him charming. Rachel always laughed a little too hard at his stories. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in March. I was in the kitchen making dinner when Rachel's phone buzzed on the counter. The message preview lit up the screen. "Can't wait for your birthday tomorrow, my love. I have something special planned for us." Rachel's birthday wasn't for another 3 months. "Honey, your phone," I called out, keeping my voice steady. She practically sprinted from the living room, snatching the device before I could blink. "Thanks," she said, not meeting my eyes. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling while Rachel slept peacefully beside me, or pretended to sleep. I started connecting dots that should have been obvious months ago. The new lingerie she claimed was for confidence. The way she'd started going to the gym religiously, then coming home glowing and refreshed. The credit card charges at expensive restaurants during her lunch meetings. I'm a systems engineer. I solve problems for a living, and Rachel had just become my biggest problem. The next morning, she announced she was throwing a birthday party at our house that weekend. "Just a few people from work," she said, already scrolling through her phone. "You don't mind, do you?" "Of course not," I replied, pouring coffee with hands that barely trembled. "It'll be fun." Rachel's smile was radiant. "You're the best, David. I don't know what I'd do without you." I knew exactly what she'd do without me. She'd do it with Greg Turner. But here's the thing about being underestimated your whole life. People forget you're paying attention. They forget you're smart. And they definitely forget that quiet guys like me can be absolutely ruthless when pushed too far. I spent the rest of that week doing research. Social media is a beautiful thing when you're looking for dirt. Elena Turner, Greg's fiancée, documented every moment of her pregnancy on Instagram. Glowing selfies with captions like "Blessed and Engaged" and "Turner Baby 2024. She looked genuinely happy, posing with her growing belly and showing off her engagement ring. Meanwhile, her fiancé was planning birthday surprises for my wife. Rachel's friends Mia and Carly knew something was up. I could tell from the way they whispered and giggled when they came over to help plan the party. They kept shooting me these pitying looks, like I was the last person in Baltimore to figure out my wife was cheating. "David's so sweet," Mia said to Rachel while arranging flowers. "He's really okay with all this?" "He doesn't suspect a thing," Rachel replied. "He's too trusting." Too trusting. Right. I was standing 10 feet away but apparently invisible. Story of my marriage. The party was scheduled for Saturday night. By Thursday, I had a plan. My best friend Jake works in IT security. We've known each other since college, and he's one of those guys who can make technology do whatever he wants. More importantly, he's loyal and has a healthy appreciation for creative revenge. "You want me to help you catch Rachel cheating?" Jake asked when I called him Thursday evening. I want to document it, I corrected. There's a difference. Sounds like the same thing with extra steps. The extra steps matter, trust me. Jake came over Friday night while Rachel was at her book club, which I now knew was code for meeting Greg at whatever hotel they'd been using. We set up discreet cameras in the living room and kitchen. Nothing fancy, just phones positioned to look like they were charging while actually recording. This feels very spy movie, Jake said, adjusting the angle on one device. Spy movies don't usually involve suburban birthday parties and middle-aged adultery. Fair point. Those are usually more interesting. Saturday arrived with Rachel in full party planning mode. She'd bought a new dress, black, tight, and definitely not something you'd wear to celebrate with your husband. She spent 2 hours on her makeup and kept checking her phone every 5 minutes. "Greg's bringing wine," she announced around noon. "That expensive stuff he likes. How thoughtful of him. He's really generous. You should try to be friendlier tonight, David. Greg could be good for your career, too." The irony was so thick, I could have served it with crackers. My wife was asking me to be nice to the man she was sleeping with so he might help my career. The same career she was presumably planning to destroy when she left me for him. "I'll be on my best behavior," I promised. The guests started arriving at 7. Mia and Carly came first, followed by a handful of Rachel's coworkers. Everyone seemed unusually excited, like they were expecting some kind of show, which, in retrospect, they probably were. Greg arrived fashionably late, carrying a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my car payment. He was one of those men who thought expensive clothes could hide the fact that he was fundamentally sleazy. Tailored suit, perfect hair, smile that never reached his eyes. "David!" he boomed, shaking my hand with the aggressive grip of someone marking territory. "Great to see you, buddy. Rachel's told me so much about you." "I'm sure she has. You're a lucky man. Rachel's special." "She certainly is." The party progressed exactly as I'd expected. Rachel and Greg gravitated toward each other like magnets. She laughed at his jokes, touched his arm when she talked, and kept refilling his wine glass. Their body language screamed intimacy to anyone paying attention, which was everyone except, supposedly, me. Around 9 o'clock, I excused myself to the kitchen and sent a text message. "Hi, Elena. This is David Lawson, Rachel's husband. I know this might seem strange, but I think Greg would really appreciate it if you stopped by our party tonight. It's at address. Rachel would love to meet you." I hit send before I could change my mind. Elena responded within minutes. "That's so sweet. I've been feeling cooped up with the pregnancy. Greg didn't mention a party, but I'd love to surprise him." It'll definitely be a surprise. Back in the living room, the party was hitting its stride. Someone had turned up the music, and Rachel was dancing with Greg in a way that would have been inappropriate at a high school reunion, let alone a married woman's birthday party. Mia caught my eye and mouthed, "Are you okay?" I nodded and smiled. I was better than okay. I was about to be vindicated. The doorbell rang at 9:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I checked my watch, wanting to remember this moment forever. "I'll get it," I called out, though no one was paying attention. Elena Turner stood on my doorstep, radiant in her pregnancy glow and completely unaware that she was about to detonate a nuclear bomb in my living room. She was smaller than she looked in photos, with kind eyes and an excited smile. "You must be David," she said. "I'm Elena. Thank you so much for inviting me. Greg's going to be so surprised." "He certainly is." I led her through the foyer toward the living room, where Rachel was still pressed against Greg, her hand resting on his chest as she whispered something in his ear. The music was loud enough that no one noticed us approaching. "Greg?" Elena called out, her voice bright with anticipation. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Greg jerked away from Rachel like he'd been electrocuted. Rachel spun around, her face cycling through confusion, recognition, and horror in the span of 3 seconds. The conversations around the room faded as people realized something was happening. "Elena," Greg stammered. "What are you doing here?" "David invited me. Wasn't that sweet?" Elena's smile was beginning to falter as she took in the scene. Greg's lipstick-stained collar, Rachel's hand still hovering near his chest, the guilty expressions spreading across both their faces. "I thought you should meet Rachel," I said pleasantly, "since you two have so much in common." The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Elena Turner might have been pregnant and trusting, but she wasn't stupid. I watched her process the scene, Greg's guilt, Rachel's panic, the way everyone else in the room was suddenly fascinated by their drinks. Her face went through a series of expressions that would have been funny if they weren't so heartbreaking. "Greg," she said slowly, "why do you look like you've seen a ghost?" We were just..." Greg's usual confidence had evaporated. The man who commanded boardrooms and intimidated subordinates was reduced to stammering like a teenager caught sneaking out. Rachel, to her credit, recovered faster. "Elena, right? I've heard so much about you. Congratulations on the pregnancy." "Thank you." Elena's voice was cooling by degrees. "Greg talks about work all the time, especially about Rachel." The emphasis on my wife's name was subtle but unmistakable. I found myself genuinely liking Greg's fiancée, which made what was happening both more satisfying and more tragic. "We should probably go," Greg said, reaching for Elena's arm. She stepped away from him. "Actually, I just got here. David went to the trouble of inviting me, and I'd love to stay for a bit, get to know Rachel better." Mia and Carly were watching this unfold like it was their favorite soap opera. The other guests were pretending not to stare while hanging on every word. I was quietly documenting everything, my phone positioned to capture the beautiful disaster I'd orchestrated. "So, Rachel," Elena continued, settling into a chair with the deliberate movements of a woman who'd made up her mind about something, "how long have you and Greg been working together?" "About 2 years," Rachel replied carefully. "He speaks about you constantly. Rachel thinks this, Rachel suggested that." I was starting to feel like I knew you personally. "Greg's a great boss." "I'm sure he is." Elena's smile could have cut glass. "He's very hands-on with his work, isn't he?" The double meaning wasn't lost on anyone. Greg looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Rachel's composure was cracking, her PR training warring with pure panic. "Elena, honey, maybe we should discuss this at home." Greg tried again. "Discuss what, darling? I'm just getting to know your colleagues, unless there's something you don't want me to know." And there it was, the moment when Elena Turner transformed from trusting fiancé to avenging angel. I had to admire her style. She was dismantling both of them with surgical precision and a smile. "There's nothing to discuss," Rachel said quickly. "We're just friends." "Friends?" Elena nodded thoughtfully. "The kind of friends who have birthday parties for each other?" "It's not Greg's birthday," I interjected helpfully. "It's Rachel's." "Well, supposedly." Elena's eyes sharpened. "But your birthday isn't until June, is it, Rachel?" Greg mentioned it when he was planning his calendar. The room went silent. Rachel's face cycled through several colors before settling on an unhealthy shade of gray. Rachel started, then stopped. There was no good way out of this hole. "You know what's funny?" Elena continued conversationally. "Greg's been getting mysterious phone calls lately, giggling like a schoolgirl and taking them in the other room. And he's been working such long hours, so dedicated." Greg was sweating now, actual beads of perspiration forming on his forehead despite the cool evening air. "Elena, please." "Please what, Greg? Please don't ask questions. Please don't notice when my fiancé comes home smelling like another woman's perfume." The nuclear bomb had officially detonated. Mia and Carly were no longer pretending not to watch. Several guests had their phones out, undoubtedly recording what was shaping up to be the social media event of the year. This is a misunderstanding, Rachel tried desperately. Is it? Elena stood up, her pregnancy making the movement deliberate and somehow more intimidating. Because it looks to me like my fiancé has been celebrating fake birthdays with his married coworker while I'm at home growing his child. The word child hung in the air like an accusation. Greg actually flinched. We should talk privately, he said. Oh, now you want privacy? After you've been publicly humiliating me for months? Elena's voice was rising, her composure finally cracking. How long, Greg? How long have you been cheating on me with her? It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. Elena turned to Rachel, her eyes blazing. And you? You're married. How could you do this? Rachel looked at me for the first time since Elena had arrived, her eyes pleading for, what? Support? Forgiveness? An escape route? I gave her my most pleasant smile. Don't look at me, honey. This is your party. The party ended with all the grace of a plane crash. Elena stormed out, but not before delivering a few more devastating observations about Greg's character and Rachel's moral compass. Greg followed her, trying to do damage control, while she loudly informed him that the engagement was off and he could find somewhere else to live. The guests scattered like roaches when the lights come on. Mia and Carly lingered just long enough to get the full story, their expressions mixing sympathy with barely contained excitement at having witnessed such spectacular drama. David, I'm so sorry, Mia said, though her tone suggested she was anything but sorry to have front-row seats to the show. These things happen, I replied philosophically. After everyone left, Rachel and I were alone in our living room, surrounded by the debris of her fake birthday party. Empty wine glasses, scattered napkins, and the lingering scent of expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. David, I can explain, she started. Can you? Because I'm really curious how you explain celebrating your fake birthday with your married boss while his pregnant fiancée is at home. It's not what it looked like? Really? Because it looked like you were having an affair with Greg Turner. Was I wrong about that? Rachel's face crumpled. It just happened. We didn't plan it. You didn't plan it? The secret phone calls, the new wardrobe, the mysterious birthday party? None of that was planned? You don't understand the pressure I'm under at work. Greg and I, we just connected. He understands my ambitions. I'm sure he does, along with your bra size and your schedule when I'm not home. Don't be crude. Crude? Rachel, you just got caught cheating at a party in our house, and you're worried about me being crude? She sat down heavily on the couch, her party dress wrinkled and her perfect makeup smeared. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now? Now you get to live with the consequences of your choices. Are you going to divorce me? I'm going to think about it. But first, I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who you are. Her head snapped up. What does that mean? It means your little performance tonight was just the opening act, Rachel. The real show starts Monday morning when you go back to work. I'd already uploaded the videos to my cloud storage. The confrontation with Elena, Rachel's confession, Greg's pathetic attempts at damage control, all of it captured in high definition. But I wasn't planning to release everything at once. That would be crude. No, I was going to savor this, like a fine wine or a perfectly aged cheese. Rachel tried to sleep in our bed that night, but I'd already moved her things to the guest room. Until we figure this out, I told her. David, please, can't we talk about this like adults? Adults don't cheat on their spouses, Rachel. Adults don't lie about fake birthdays and secret relationships. You made your choice. Now live with it. Monday morning came with the kind of gray, drizzly weather that matched my mood perfectly. Rachel left for work early, probably hoping to get to Greg before the office gossip mill started churning. She was optimistic if she thought she could control this narrative. I waited until 10 a.m., when I knew the Monday morning meetings would be wrapping up, before I sent the first video to 3 people: HR manager Susan Brown, Rachel's direct supervisor Jennifer Walsh, and Greg's assistant Mark, who was notorious for being unable to keep secrets. The video was carefully edited to show just the confrontation between Elena and Rachel, with Greg's guilty reactions clearly visible. No sound, just the visual of a pregnant woman confronting her fiancé's mistress while said mistress's husband watched from the sidelines. I included a simple message. Thought you should know what happened at Rachel's birthday party Saturday night. The woman in the blue dress is Greg Turner's pregnant fiancée. Then I sat back and waited for the chaos to begin. By noon, my phone was buzzing with texts from Jake. Dude, whatever you did, it's working. The entire Turner and Associates office is going crazy. Someone said Greg got called into an emergency meeting with the partners. Interesting. Rachel's been seen crying in the bathroom twice. Mia's been fielding calls all morning asking if the rumors are true. What rumors? That Rachel's been sleeping with her married boss and his pregnant girlfriend found out at a party. Also that there's video. The beauty of office gossip is its efficiency. Within hours, everyone in Rachel's professional circle knew about Saturday night. The video I'd sent was making the rounds, probably copied and forwarded dozens of times. Rachel came home that evening looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Her eyes were red, her hair was disheveled, and her professional composure had completely evaporated. They suspended me, she announced without preamble. Who did? HR, pending investigation into my relationship with Greg. Someone sent them video from the party. That's terrible. Who would do such a thing? She stared at me, probably trying to determine if I was being sarcastic or genuinely supportive. I kept my expression neutral. They suspended Greg too. His fiancée called off the engagement and moved out. She's threatening to sue him for emotional distress. Elena seems like a smart woman. David, I need you to know that Greg and I never did anything inappropriate at work. It was always after hours. Oh, well, that makes it completely acceptable then. I'm trying to explain. You're trying to minimize. There's a difference. Rachel sank into a chair, looking defeated. What do you want me to say? I want you to say the truth. How long has this been going on? 3 months. Where did you meet? Hotels? His apartment downtown. He keeps it for when he works late. How romantic. A love nest funded by his day job while his pregnant fiancée decorates their real home. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. How was it supposed to happen, Rachel? Were you planning to leave me for him, or just keep me around as the stable husband while you had your fun on the side? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to move out, tonight. You can stay with Mia or Carly or whoever will take you in. I'm filing for divorce, and I'm keeping the house. David, please. I'm not done. You're also going to discover that your little affair has consequences beyond just losing your job. Greg's not going to be able to help your career anymore. In fact, I suspect his career is about to take a significant downturn. What did you do? I documented your relationship. Thoroughly. And I plan to share that documentation with anyone who might find it interesting. The second video went out Tuesday morning. This one included audio of Rachel's confession from Saturday night, along with her admission about the 3-month timeline. I sent it to a wider distribution list, all of Rachel's professional contacts, the local PR industry newsletter, and several social media accounts that specialized in workplace drama. I also created a simple website, The Truth About Rachel Lawson. Nothing elaborate, just the facts presented in a clean, professional format. Her affair timeline, Greg's betrayal of his pregnant fiancée, and the video evidence to support it all. Within 48 hours, Rachel had become a cautionary tale in Baltimore's PR community. Greg fared even worse. His firm fired him after Elena's lawyer sent them a detailed letter about his conduct and its potential liability implications. But I wasn't done yet. Rachel moved in with Mia, who was probably thrilled to have a front-row seat to the ongoing drama. Greg, meanwhile, had been forced to move back in with his parents after Elena cleaned out their joint accounts, and took most of their shared assets. The professional consequences were swift and brutal. Rachel's suspension became a termination when the company decided they couldn't risk the negative publicity. Greg's firing made the local business journal, complete with speculation about the personal conduct issues that had led to his dismissal. But the personal consequences were just getting started. I'd always been good with technology, but Jake was a master. Together, we created a comprehensive digital record of Rachel and Greg's affair. Not just the videos from the party, but a timeline constructed from social media posts, credit card records. Rachel had been careless about using our joint account, and cell phone data. "This is some next-level detective work," Jake said as we compiled everything into a presentation. "You should consider a career change. I like my current job. It's stable. Unlike your marriage." Exactly. The presentation was a masterpiece of documentation. Every hotel visit, every expensive lunch, every lie Rachel had told about working late, all of it laid out with timestamps and supporting evidence. I called it a case study in workplace ethics violations. I sent it to Elena's lawyer first, as supporting evidence for her emotional distress lawsuit against Greg. Then I sent it to the Maryland Bar Association, since Greg was a licensed attorney and his conduct reflected poorly on the profession. Finally, I sent it to every major employer in Baltimore's PR and legal industries, with a note explaining that these individuals might not be the best cultural fit for organizations that valued integrity. The response was immediate and devastating. Greg received a formal censure from the Bar Association and had his license suspended pending a full ethics investigation. Rachel discovered that she'd been effectively blacklisted from every major PR firm in the city. But the most satisfying consequence was social. Mia and Carly, Rachel's supposed best friends, turned on her with the viciousness that only close friends can muster. It turned out they'd been documenting Rachel's affair for months, taking screenshots of her indiscreet social media posts and gossiping about her behavior behind her back. "We tried to warn her," Mia told me when she called to check on me, "but she was so arrogant about it. She actually bragged about how Greg was going to leave Elena for her." "Really?" "She showed us pictures of this expensive necklace he bought her. Said it proved he was serious about their relationship." "What necklace?" "Some diamond thing. She wore it to lunch last week and kept talking about how Greg had such good taste." I remembered that necklace. Rachel had claimed it was a bonus gift from her company for landing a big client. Another lie in an endless series of lies. "Mia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course." "How long have you known about the affair?" There was a pause. "David, we didn't want to hurt you." "How long?" "Since it started. Maybe before it started. Rachel's been talking about Greg for over a year. How attractive he was, how successful, how his fiancée didn't appreciate him." "And you didn't think I should know?" "We thought she'd come to her senses, and honestly, we thought you already knew and were choosing to ignore it." "Why would you think that?" "Because you're not stupid, David, and Rachel wasn't exactly subtle." She was right. I had known, or at least suspected, for months. I'd just chosen to gather evidence instead of confronting the situation directly. Some might call that cowardly. I preferred to think of it as strategic. "Is there anything else I should know?" I asked. "She's been telling people that you're controlling and emotionally abusive, that the affair was her way of escaping an unhappy marriage." "Of course she has. Nobody believes her, if that helps. We've all seen how you two interact. You're probably the most patient man in Maryland." "Probably." After I hung up with Mia, I sat in my empty house and considered my next move. Rachel was spinning a narrative where she was the victim of my supposed abuse. Greg was probably telling a similar story about how their relationship was true love that transcended conventional morality. It was time to set the record straight. The Baltimore Business Journal runs a weekly feature called Ethics in the Workplace, where they discuss professional conduct issues and their consequences. It's usually boring stuff about expense account fraud or conflicts of interest. but sometimes they feature more interesting cases. I contacted the editor, a woman named Patricia Stevens, and offered her an exclusive story about a recent case involving workplace affairs, professional misconduct, and the importance of personal integrity in business relationships. "I have documentation," I told her during our phone conversation. "Video evidence, timeline data, financial records, everything you'd need to write a comprehensive case study." "What's your interest in this story?" she asked. "I'm the betrayed husband, and I think the business community should understand the full scope of what happened here." Patricia was intrigued. We met for coffee, and I presented her with a carefully edited version of my evidence. Nothing salacious or overly personal, just a clear timeline of professional boundary violations and their consequences. "This is remarkable documentation," she said, reviewing the materials. "You've essentially created a textbook example of how workplace affairs can destroy careers." That was the idea. "What outcome are you hoping for?" "I want people to understand that actions have consequences. Rachel and Greg made choices that hurt innocent people. They should own those choices." The article ran the following Wednesday under the headline, "When Workplace Romance Goes Wrong, a Case Study in Professional Misconduct." It didn't use Rachel or Greg's real names, but anyone in Baltimore's business community would recognize the details. The article was thorough, professional, and devastating. It outlined how a senior executive had used his position to initiate an affair with a subordinate, how both parties had violated company policies and professional ethics, and how their conduct had ultimately destroyed multiple lives and careers. Patricia had done her homework, interviewing Elena, who was happy to discuss the emotional impact of Greg's betrayal, several of Rachel and Greg's former colleagues, and even me, though I was identified only as the betrayed spouse. The article included a sidebar about the legal and professional consequences both parties had faced, including Greg's bar suspension and Rachel's industry blacklisting. It concluded with expert commentary about the importance of maintaining professional boundaries and the long-term career damage that can result from ethical violations. Within hours of publication, the article was being shared across social media and professional networks. Greg's and Rachel's real names were quickly identified by people who recognized the details, and suddenly their story was being discussed in business schools and HR departments across the region. Rachel called me that evening, sobbing. "David, you've ruined my life." "I documented your choices, Rachel. You ruined your own life." "I can't get a job anywhere. People recognize me from that article." "Maybe you should have thought about that before you started sleeping with your married boss." "I made a mistake." "You made a series of calculated decisions over several months. That's not a mistake, it's a pattern of behavior." "What do you want from me? I've lost everything." "I want you to understand that your actions had consequences for real people. Elena lost her fiancé and the father of her child. I lost my wife and my trust in marriage. You don't get to play victim here. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. But you didn't care if anyone got hurt, did you? As long as you got what you wanted." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "The divorce papers will be ready next week," I continued. "I suggest you find a good lawyer, though given your reputation in this city, that might be challenging." I hung up and poured myself a glass of wine, the expensive bottle Greg had brought to Rachel's fake birthday party. It seemed appropriate. 3 months after the party that started it all, I was sitting in my lawyer's office reviewing the final divorce settlement. Rachel had agreed to everything. She didn't have much choice, given her complete lack of leverage and her inability to afford a decent attorney. I kept the house, the cars, and most of our joint assets. Rachel got her personal belongings and enough money to start over somewhere else, preferably far from Baltimore. "This is remarkably one-sided," my lawyer, Tom Richardson, observed. "She must have had terrible representation." "She represented herself. Couldn't find anyone willing to take her case." "Ah, the Business Journal article?" "Among other things." Tom had been following the story with professional interest. As one of Baltimore's top divorce attorneys, he appreciated a well-executed campaign of legal and social consequences. "What's your ex-wife doing now?" he asked. "Last I heard, she was moving to Phoenix. Apparently, her reputation hasn't reached Arizona yet." "And Greg Turner?" "Still living with his parents. Elena's lawsuit cleaned him out, and the bar suspension means he can't practice law. I heard he's selling insurance now. Poetic justice. I prefer to think of it as logical consequences." The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday in June, Rachel's actual birthday, which seemed fitting. I celebrated by taking Elena Turner to lunch. She'd had her baby the month before, a healthy girl she'd named Sophie. Elena was doing well, all things considered. Greg's financial settlement had set her up comfortably, and she'd started a blog about single motherhood that was gaining a following. "How are you holding up?" I asked as we sat in the restaurant where Rachel and Greg used to meet for their secret lunches. "Better than I expected," Elena said, adjusting Sophie's blanket. "It's strange, but I'm actually happier now than I was when I was engaged to Greg." "Really?" "I think I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to admit it. The constant work calls, the mysterious schedule changes, the way he'd get defensive when I asked simple questions. Rachel was the same way. In retrospect, the signs were obvious." "Do you regret how you handled it? The public exposure, I mean?" I considered the question. "No, they made their choices publicly. The party, the workplace affair, the lies to both of us. They deserved public consequences. Greg still calls sometimes, wants to explain and make things right." "What do you tell him?" "Nothing. I blocked his number." Elena was a smart woman. She'd moved on completely, focusing on her daughter and her new life. Meanwhile, Greg was apparently still trying to convince himself that he'd been the victim of circumstances rather than the architect of his own destruction. "What about you?" Elena asked. "Any plans for the future?" "I'm thinking about writing a book. A systems approach to marital revenge, or something like that." She laughed. "You could probably teach a masterclass. The key is documentation and patience. Most people want immediate gratification when they've been wronged. But the best revenge is systematic and thorough. And legal. Always legal. I never did anything that could get me in trouble. I just made sure everyone knew the truth about what Rachel and Greg had done." As we finished lunch, Elena's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and smiled. "New follower on the blog. Someone in Seattle who says my story helped her leave her cheating husband. You're becoming famous. For all the right reasons, I hope." That evening, I sat in my living room now, not ours, and reflected on the past 6 months. Rachel was gone, Greg was ruined, and I was free to start over. The house was quiet, but it was a peaceful quiet, rather than the tense silence that had characterized the final months of my marriage. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Drinks tonight? I want to hear how the divorce went." "Sure, but you're buying. I'm celebrating." "Fair enough. You've earned it." As I got ready to meet Jake, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked different than I had 6 months ago. Happier, maybe. Definitely more confident. There's something to be said for standing up for yourself, even if it takes a while to work up the courage. Rachel had called me controlling and emotionally abusive in her desperate attempt to rewrite history. But the truth was simpler. I'd been a patient man who'd finally run out of patience. And when that happened, I'd made sure the consequences were proportional to the betrayal. Some people might call that cruel. I called it justice. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Greg Turner at a grocery store in downtown Baltimore. He looked terrible, 20 pounds heavier, poorly dressed, with the defeated posture of a man who'd lost everything that mattered to him. He saw me first and actually tried to duck down the cereal aisle to avoid a confrontation, but I'd spotted him, and I wasn't about to let this opportunity pass. "Greg," I called out pleasantly. "How are you doing?" He turned slowly, his face cycling through embarrassment, anger, and resignation. "David, I'm fine. How are you? Excellent. Really excellent. I heard you're in insurance now. It's temporary, just until I can get my law license back. Of course. How's that going? His face darkened. The bar association is being unreasonable. What happened between Rachel and me was personal, not professional. Except it happened at work, with a subordinate, while you were engaged to someone else. But I'm sure the ethics committee will see it your way eventually. Greg's jaw tightened. You destroyed my life over a relationship that had nothing to do with you. Actually, it had everything to do with me. Rachel was my wife. You were sleeping with my wife. That makes it my business. We were in love. You were in lust. There's a difference. You don't understand what Rachel and I had. I understand exactly what you had. You had a selfish affair that hurt everyone around you. Your fiancé, your child, me, Rachel herself. And when the consequences caught up with you, you blamed everyone except yourselves. Greg stepped closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you won. I know I won, Greg. You're selling insurance and living with your parents. Rachel's in Arizona working at some small-town PR firm for half her old salary. Elena's raising your daughter alone. I'm the only one who came out of this better than I went in. This isn't over. Yes, it is. It's been over since the night Elena showed up at that party. Everything since then has just been cleanup. I started to walk away, then turned back. Oh, and Greg? If you ever contact me again, or Rachel, or especially Elena, I'll make sure everyone knows you're still harassing the people whose lives you ruined. The Business Journal would probably love a follow-up story. His face went pale. The article in the Baltimore Business Journal had become a case study in business ethics courses at 3 local universities. Greg's name was permanently associated with professional misconduct and personal betrayal. I left him standing in the cereal aisle, looking like a man who'd finally understood that his actions had permanent consequences. That weekend, I had dinner with Elena and Sophie. It had become a monthly tradition, 2 people who'd been betrayed by the same selfish individuals, building a friendship based on mutual respect and shared experience. Greg tried to call me again, Elena mentioned, as we watched Sophie play with her toys. What did you tell him? Nothing. I let it go to voicemail. He wants to be part of Sophie's life. What do you think about that? Elena was quiet for a moment. I think he had his chance to be part of her life. He chose Rachel instead. Fair point. Sophie deserves better than a father who abandoned her before she was born. If Greg wanted to be a parent, he should have thought about that before he decided to cheat on me. Elena had grown stronger over the past year. The betrayal that could have broken her had instead made her more independent and self-reliant. She'd built a successful blog, started a consulting business, and created a stable home for her daughter. Any regrets? I asked. About Greg? None. About how everything happened? Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't invited me to that party. You would have found out eventually. Greg wasn't smart enough to keep a secret forever. Maybe, but I'm glad it happened the way it did, public and immediate, no room for lies or excuses. That was the idea. As the evening wound down, Elena put Sophie to bed while I cleaned up the dinner dishes. It was comfortable, domestic, and completely different from the tense atmosphere that had characterized the final months of my marriage to Rachel. David, Elena said when she returned to the kitchen, I have something to tell you. What's that? I've been seeing someone. A guy I met at Sophie's pediatrician's office. His name is Mark, and he's a single father too. That's great. I'm happy for you. I wanted you to know because you've become such an important friend, and because I wanted to make sure you were okay with it. I smiled. Elena, you don't need my permission to date. You deserve to be happy. I know. It's just that after everything that happened with Greg, I want to make sure I'm making good choices. What's Mark like? Kind. Honest. He talks about his ex-wife without bitterness, and he's never once made a negative comment about her in front of his son. He's the opposite of Greg in every way that matters. Then he sounds perfect. That night, driving home through the quiet Baltimore streets, I reflected on how much had changed since Rachel's fake birthday party. Elena had found love again. Rachel had presumably learned something about consequences, though I doubted she'd learned enough. Greg was still trying to convince himself that he'd been wronged rather than wrong. And me? I'd learned that I was capable of more than I'd ever imagined. Not just the revenge — anyone can get revenge if they're angry enough — but the systematic, patient, thorough destruction of people who'd betrayed me. The ability to stay calm and strategic while my world was falling apart. I'd also learned that I was happier alone than I'd been in a bad marriage. The house was quiet, but it was my quiet, my space, my rules, my life. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "David, this is Rachel. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry for everything. I hope you can forgive me someday." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Some apologies come too late to matter. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. Rachel had made her choices. Now she could live with them. I walked into my house, poured myself a glass of wine, and raised a toast to the empty living room. "To consequences," I said aloud, "and to the people who deserve them."